If you want to take your piano playing from sounding like this to sounding like this, this is the video for you. I'm gonna be teaching you how to play smooth chord progressions, catchy top line melodies, and how to make your piano playing sound insane, even if you have no idea what you're doing. I'm not here to bore you today with all the technical terms behind music theory because one, I don't really know all of them, and two, I feel like there's enough super formal piano lessons out there that teach you everything by the book. But I wanted to make this video for producers who don't care about all that and just want to know how to play dope stuff and get started making crazy melodies playing the keys. If you've got a MIDI controller like this that's been sitting collecting dust and you finally want to put it to use and level up your melodies, stick around and get ready for some gems. First thing I want to say is that there's no simple trick that can just instantly make you good at playing the piano. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that does take practice. However, I do have the method that I personally use to teach myself the keys, and I've broken the system down into 4 levels that you can reference and track your progress with. Starting with level 1. Top line melodies. For the first level, I just want to focus on monophonic melodies, which is just a fancy way of saying one note at a time. So right now, you're not going to be playing any full chords, just one note at a time. Because if you have zero skill playing the keys and go straight into playing chords, it's going to be super overwhelming. Anyways, the first thing I did to start getting better at playing these monophonic or top line catchy melodies is step 1, learn all the notes on the piano. So if we look on this app, Chordy right here, and I'm going to run through and show you every single note, starting first with all the white notes. So we start here with C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C. And then these black notes right here, are what you call sharps and flats. So to think of it simply, sharp means you're putting the note up 1 and flat means you're putting the note down 1. So if we take this C note right here and we wanted to make a C sharp, we would go up, making that a C sharp, but you see that it has this little B right here. The symbol for a sharp is a hashtag and the symbol for a flat is a B. So this is C sharp, but it's also D flat because if you go to this note D and flat it, it becomes D flat. So technically, I don't know if this is the right way to look at it, but the way that I look at it is I just think of everything as sharps or everything as flats. To memorize the notes, I've seen a couple clever things that people have done. The first thing is taking some piece of tape and actually writing the notes on the piano so that when you're looking at your piano, eventually you're just gonna get a kind of a grip for where the notes are. But honestly, if I were you, I would even just go online and look up like notes on the piano quiz and just keep taking like Quizlets and stuff like that, looking at, right, seeing this note without this like note label and being like, what note is that? Oh, that's a G sharp or an A flat. That's a G. That's a C. There's a D. You want to get to the point that anyone could click any random note on the piano and you could tell them what note that is. And the nice thing is each one of these notes is not completely different. It's just the same octave repeating over and over, just getting higher in pitch. So you only need to memorize 12 different notes. And once you know all the notes on the piano, you want to choose a scale and stick to it. So this has been my go-to method for learning the piano because in my eyes, if you commit to only learning one scale at a time, you can learn it by memory way faster because you're only hyper fixated on one thing. Instead of trying to learn every single scale that's out there all at once, you can just master one scale or key, same thing, and get good at playing in that key. And if you're using MIDI, it doesn't even matter because you can play it in C minor and just transpose it up to E minor if that's the key that you wanted for your melody. And it doesn't really matter what scale you use, but here's some good go-to scales that I think would be good to start with. The first one being C minor, and this is the scale that I actually chose to work with. And I think one reason that this is a great scale to work with is because a lot of sound kits and stuff that's out there are all tuned to C. So if you're adding in vocal chops, phrases, one shots, all this kind of stuff, you're already going to be in the right key. So it's convenient. But second, I just think of C as kind of like the home base on the piano. So it just kind of made sense to me to learn C minor. And the next scale I want to talk about is A minor, which is a very easy scale to learn because it is literally all of these white notes. So you just start on A and just keep walking up all those white notes. So you could, in theory, just play anything on the white notes, and technically it's in key. The reason I don't like using A minor though is because, at least in my experience, I feel like if you just only play the white keys, you kind of don't learn the pattern as well of like what's going on compared to when you have to play the black keys. Because when you have to play the black keys, you have to think a little bit. It's not as literally black and white, but because of that, you're going to develop some better habits instead of just like playing just random notes with no thought whatsoever using only the white notes. Another great one to learn would be E flat minor or D sharp minor, whatever you want to call it. And the reason is all of the black notes are in the scale. And the reason that I personally like this better than learning A minor, if you're going to choose one that has all of one note in the scale, is because all of these black notes, not to get too technical, are in something called the pentatonic scale. So you could do some really cool top line melodies just using the black notes. And another easy one is D minor, because it's very similar to A minor in that almost all of it is all the white keys. Anyways, once you choose a scale, you want to commit to it. So you want to make sure that all you're doing is trying to learn how to play in that scale. And the first step to playing in that scale is learning all the notes in that specific scale. So the way that I would memorize this is, one, looking up YouTube tutorials on how to play X scale or what notes are in X scale. Maybe download a picture, print it out of the notes that are in that scale, put it right by your monitor or something like that, so you can always look up, get a refresher. Another thing that you could do if you're an FL is turn on your ghost notes. So turn on ghost notes for this key of C minor, and it will show you all the notes that are in C minor, and just kind of keep looking at that day after day and practicing playing along with it. And again, even just memorizing with stuff like flashcards, giving yourself quizzes and stuff like that. But the real sauce will come in during practice. And you could do this using those quizzes and flashcards and all that I was talking about. But if you're like me and you learn better from hands-on experience, which I would recommend because you're going to get used to playing the piano anyways, I would learn this by just looking at an image similar to this one that I have on the screen right here, and just like saying the note out loud. C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B. Learning like that until I can just click that note, no, it's a G sharp, all that kind of stuff. Once you've got all the notes down, you're going to choose your key like we talked about earlier. And then once you have that, you want to practice 15 minutes a day playing that key up and down on the keyboard. And I found that personally for me, the best way to do this is by either playing on your own loops as the backing track, even playing to a fire drum beat. Anything beats just playing to the metronome or playing to straight silence, because one, you're going to be getting a better feeling for playing in time with stuff, because that's another skill. So let me show you real quick how I would actually go and practice this if I was trying to learn this right now. So as I mentioned earlier, my key that I've always tried to learn is C minor. So I dragged in this loop that's in C minor, and I'm just going to turn on the metronome, play the loop through, and then now I'm just going to grab my piano plugin. And I really recommend, even if you're using a MIDI and you could use any sound, use a piano at first, because it's very easy to kind of learn or like hear the pitch of a piano. So it's easier to tell if you're making mistakes or not. But I would just essentially play the loop, try to play it like that, up and down the scale. And then maybe as you get better, you can go faster. Right? Once you get to that point that you can play stuff up and down very easily, you can start to mix in playing stuff out of order. So this is where you're actually going to start improvising top line melodies. Another great tool that I used to use when I was trying to learn my scales is if you look up C minor scale practice on YouTube, you're going to find YouTube tutorials that you can just follow along with. I used to use those all the time as practice, but I really want to stress that it is important to practice every single day. The reason you want to do it, even if it's just like a minute or two a day, you just sit down at your piano real quick, make sure you know how to play your scale up and down. It's just going to be developing that muscle memory. It's like riding a bike. And just as a little testament to that, whenever I was trying to get better at playing the chords up and down the scale, I actually bought this little piano because I was about to go on like a 3-week vacation and I was in the middle of trying to learn all this stuff. So I brought this with me and I would just sit down and practice playing on the keys, even without anything plugged, just so I could get a feeling and memorize where my fingers are supposed to go to hit the notes that I'm supposed to hit. So please make sure you're practicing every single day. Now that we've gone over monophonic melodies, it's time to get into level 2 chords. So assuming you know all the notes on the keyboard, you're good at playing your scale up and down, maybe even improvising a little bit here and there, you're now ready to start learning how to play chords. And before I actually dive into teaching you about chords, I want to mention something that was super helpful for me in my journey playing the keys, especially when I started learning how to play chords. You are really going to want to buy one of these bad boys right here, which is a sustain pedal. Essentially what this does is whenever you hold this down with your foot, right? So this will be on the ground. Whatever note you're playing on the piano will play out forever. Let me show you inside the screen. So if I play this note right here, right, without hitting my sustain pedal, you see how that cuts off right away? If I bring the sustain pedal up here so you guys can see it, and I hold it down and I take my finger right off, it's just going to keep playing as long as I'm holding this. And then as soon as I let go, it'll stop. The reason that this is helpful when you're learning chords especially is because when you're playing something like this, let's say, right? And then you need to go all the way up here, there's gonna be this awkward silence, this awkward pause that's, for me, was very discouraging when I was trying to learn the keys because I could not get the timing right of like going like this and like making it sound smooth and good. When you have something like this, you just hold that down, then you can move your fingers as much as you want, put them in perfect position, then let go of that. Then I could go down to this chord. So it can make your playing sound a lot smoother than it might be if you were to not have one of these. So I think this was a very good purchase. I think it was like 15 or 20 bucks. And I think it helped me stay motivated because what I was playing actually sounded cool. Anyways, back to chords. The first type of chords I want to talk about with you are triads, which are the main chords that you hear in almost all popular music. And triads are very simple. They are 3 notes. And there's 2 triads that you're going to use most commonly. So those are the 2 I'm going to go over right now. The first one being a major chord, which would be 1 note. Then you're going to skip 3 notes. So you're going to skip this note, and this note. So you have a 3-note space right there. And then you're going to skip only 2 notes. So you have a 3-note space and then a 2-note space right there. That's the way that I like to think about it. And then a minor chord is literally just the same thing, but you're going to take your middle finger that's playing this note and put it down 1 note. So essentially what you're doing is reversing the spacing. So the next step that you're going to want to do is learn all the triads that are in your scale of choice. And to do this, I would do the same thing just to learn the actual notes that are in the scale. Is I would just look up what are all the triad chords in, and then put your scale. So I'm going to put C minor. Me personally, I don't know how to read music, so I would never look at something like this to learn, but I would definitely gravitate more towards some kind of image like this right here, and it shows how you would play them on piano. So this might be something that's very good that you could print out, pin it on your wall, practice putting your fingers in the positions that you see on that picture. So, right? I don't need to know yet why this works or how it works. So this is how you can like learn little by little each individual chord. But again, I would definitely use YouTube practice tutorials taught by real piano teachers. But once you have a good feel for like every triad that's in the scale, when you're working in MIDI and you're clicking stuff in MIDI, you know all the chords that are in your scale, then you can start to work on playing them up and down the scale. You can go like this. You want to get to the point that you can play stuff up and down like that. And I'm going to get into some more interesting chords in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about Sonics Academy. If you like these super in-depth ultimate guide kind of videos, you're going to love the Sonics Academy because every single month I'm in there in group calls giving you guys exclusive masterclasses that are not on YouTube, where I'm going super in-depth, super in detail. Sometimes I ramble on for over 2 hours in teaching you guys everything I know about something, which I just unfortunately don't have the time to do in my YouTube videos because I'm trying to edit them to be fast-paced so they do well with the algorithm. In here, you're also going to get a community of like-minded producers who are going to help you answer questions, access to speak with me and my team to answer questions, as well as beat reviews and unlimited feedback on your beats, which is very, very important if you're trying to get better at stuff. You can even send some videos of you playing the keys and ask for advice on how to get better at playing the keys if you're really interested in following through with this video today. But anyways, I'll put a link in the description down below to join Sonics Academy. We would love to have you, and let's get back into the video. All right, so we covered triad chords. Now I want to get into 7th chords. Now these sound kind of crazy whenever you say 7 chords. If you don't know any music theory, that sounds kind of intimidating, but these are actually very simple. Instead of having 3 notes like a triad, the only difference is it has 4 notes. So if we have a C minor chord, for example, the only thing you would do to make that a 7th chord is extend it 1 more note. And you want to use that same spacing I was talking about. You have that 2, 3, 2, and then you have 2 spaces again. So you just want to keep following that pattern. 2, 3, 2, 3. So I could extend this again by going up 3 notes. 1, 2, 3, skip that note. If I skip 1, 2, 3 and land here, all right, now we have a C minor 9 chord, right? If I wanted to do it again, I could skip 2 notes. C minor 9, 11 chord. So you could keep going up like that. But to be honest, if you want to make most types of popular music, you can get by with just 7th chords. So essentially the next step would be to learn how to play these 7th chords up and down in your scale. So you want to learn all the 7th chords that are in your key. And I know this sounds a little bit overwhelming if you haven't started any of this yet, but I promise once you know all the notes of the scale, it starts to kind of make sense. Like you start to just like know like, oh, to make this a 7th chord, I would just put my finger there because that's a note in that scale. But anyways, once you've got the triads down and you're learning those well, and you want to improve a little bit more, you start learning how to play these up and down the scale. You want to actually play these up and down the scale just like you were doing with the single notes, just like you were doing with the triads. So now let's talk about the level 2 practice regimen. If you're still not 100% confident in your ability to play single notes at a time in the scale, I would do at least 15 minutes a day of that, or at least mix in some of that with your chord practice. But then you want to do 15 minutes a day practicing going up and down the scale with those triads. And this won't really work as well doing it over a backing track because you're going to be playing chords that don't go with the chords in the music. So maybe just something as simple as like dragging in a drum loop. That's just a little bit more inspiring than a metronome like this. Right? I could just grab this and then practice over that. And you're going to see me using the sustain pedal because my fingers are going to come off and the piano is going to keep playing. All right, and then go down. So you just want to practice moving up and down like that with the chords 15 minutes a day. Even if you have to do it with one of those tiny little ones that I did on mute and just like practice the fingering, right? I don't know why I'm making those noises, but that's exactly what I did, because once you can play them up and down, so then you can start doing stuff like this and building actual chord progressions. Once you're killing it with those triads, those 3-note chords, then you're going to move on to doing it with those 7 chords. And one thing that might help you is playing the bottom note with your left hand and the top 3 notes with these hands whenever your hands aren't ready to do 4 notes at a time moving up the keyboard. And also, this might also help you because then you're going to be learning how to play coordinated this hand and this hand together, because when you're normally playing, you might play bass notes like this. Well, let me show you how that would look. Once you get good at playing everything up and down the keyboard perfectly, then you can start to mix in actual chord progressions. So what I'm actually going to do now is show you 5 of my go-to chord progressions that never fail, going from easiest to hardest to play, and they're all going to be in the scale of C minor. First chord progression is C minor to C sus2. So you're going to start with the C note, D sharp, and G. Your normal C minor triad. All you're going to do for this chord progression is simply move this note down 1 to make this a sus2 chord, which sounds like a crazy chord name, but it literally just means to suspend the second note, right? Now this works great for trap music. The next progression is a little bit harder, but still fairly easy to play, and it is C minor to G minor. So the way that I like to think about this is it's just a C minor chord, right? That same chord we started with earlier. And then if you're working in MIDI, you would just chop this chord and pitch it down 5. So since we can't just, pitch our fingers down 5 magically, we're gonna have to move it down 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to G, and play the same exact chord shape. Now, the next one's getting a little bit harder, but this is one of my all-time favorite chord progressions. I abuse the shit out of this progression. And it is an A flat major 7, or G sharp major 7, whatever you want to call it, to a G minor 7. So the way that this one works is you start right here on this G sharp or A flat, whatever you want to call it, C, D sharp, and G. You can see that that builds an A flat major 7 chord. Anyways, you're gonna have this right here, and then you're just gonna move this finger down 1 to that G, and then I'm gonna move these fingers down to a G minor 7. And if I were you, I would write down all these chord progressions and save them for later once you get good at learning chords. But anyways, on to the next progression. We have an F minor 7 to a G minor 7 to an A flat major 7. And it's very similar to the last one we just played, which if you remember, went like this. we're playing both of those chords, the major 7 and that minor 7. We're just adding in one more chord on this note, this F. So we're gonna go. And if I play that a little differently, you can probably start to hear like the pain kind of melodies. And this next one is great for melodic trap, pain vibes, and maybe even some pop music. And this one is actually not the hardest to play. I don't know why I put it as the last one. You're gonna go C minor, and then you're gonna go down 1 in the scale to this note, B flat major, and then you're gonna go right here to an A flat major. So now, assuming you know how to play triad chords and 7th chords up and down in your scale of choice, you can now start to add in embellishments and extra rhythm and stuff to spice up your playing, to make your playing sound less robotic and generic and more inspiring and ear-grabbing. So let me really quick explain what I mean by embellishments. Essentially, if I was to just play a progression as it was simply, right, it might sound like this. And if I was to embellish it, it might sound more like this. Just a little bit more inspiring, but those are all actually the same notes that are being played when you play it like this. So let me actually show you really quick a few easy ways that you can make it sound like you're really crazy at playing the keys, even if you're not playing any different notes than what the chords are already playing. So if we just take a very simple chord progression, let's say C minor, right? That progression we were playing earlier, C minor to B flat major to A flat major. First thing we could do is arpeggiate our playing. So that just simply means instead of playing all the notes like this, you go. So you could even start in the middle. You could start at the top. There's no rules. The next thing you could do is mess with rhythm. So if we take that same chord progression, right, you could play it a little bit more interesting like that. And there's 2 other great ways that I know of to add embellishments fairly easily. So the other way is to kind of play melodies within the chords. So, right, similar to arpeggiating, you might start with the chord. But then in between, before I pass to that next chord, I'm gonna go. So I'm playing all of the same notes, and then just kind of click your fingers around. You can get cool melodies like that. And then the final thing that you could do, which is one of my favorite things to make it sound like you're crazy at playing the piano when you're really not, is to play what I like to call chord sprinkles. And these sound very, very, very good on 7 chords. Normally when you're playing a chord, you would just play it in 1 octave like that. But what you're gonna do here with the sustain pedal, this is where it becomes very essential to have the sustain pedal. You cannot do this without the sustain pedal. And then you're just gonna move that same chord up an octave. Play it like gently and loosely, right? You can even go high to low. You see how that can make it sound like you're really playing some crazy stuff? So once you're at level 3 and you can play those triad chords and 7 chords really well from level 2, I would first start by improvising for 15 minutes a day, actually just playing chord progressions. So not necessarily worrying about adding embellishments and all this crazy stuff, just getting good at, regardless if it's in a specific order, you know, being able to just sit down on the piano and play progressions that sound cool to you. Once you're killing that and playing progressions smoothly and you can play some cool stuff here and there, then you can start to add in 15 minutes a day of improvising embellishments with your chords. So for example, I would just maybe put a metronome on like this. Right? That's my progression. Cool. So now what I would do, I would practice playing the chords just standard like that for 15 minutes. And then once I was good at doing that, or maybe that was my warm-up, then I would practice playing cool stuff in it. And you could also be recording this as you're doing it in case you play something cool that you want to cook up with later. my opinion, once you've mastered level 3 and you can really improvise cool embellishments and stuff like that, you're good enough to fake it till you make it, in my opinion. You can play stuff in C minor, transpose it to A minor, transpose it to whatever key you want later on. At this level, you'll be able to fake it to most people who really don't know music that you do know how to play the piano, but you definitely haven't mastered it yet, which is what I'll get into in level 4. But first, I just really want to mention a tip that really helped me learn the keys faster. Force yourself to only make your melodies playing the keys yourself. This part absolutely sucks and you are going to hate your life doing it, but it is going to help you so much. And I did this in the beginning and I remember being so pissed because there would be like a very simple top line melody that I could just click in and I knew that it would sound good, but I forced myself to play it and I could not play in time, or I would hit a wrong note and stuff like that, and it would piss me off so much, but eventually I would get it right. So if you're at level 1 and you're learning the notes that are in your scale of choice, I want you to force yourself to play every single top line melody by hand. And when you're at level 1, you don't need to worry about playing all your chord progressions in and all that yet, but at level 2, I want you to have every single chord, every single top line melody, pretty much every MIDI in the project is played in by hand. And I think aside from the practice of, the boring, like just learning up and down the scale, this is going to be a lot more fun because you're actually going to be making music. So if you're only making music by playing the piano in yourself, you're going to get a taste and you're going to learn how to do the stuff that you want to hear. Anyways, if you're at level 3, same exact thing. You're going to have to play in those chords and those embellishments and all those whatever. Every single MIDI in your melody has got to be played 100% by you. However, I will say, especially once you get to the level where you're doing chords and trying to play all the chords in, it might get to the point where it is just very, very hard for you when you're still learning how to play chords. So one thing that I think that you could do that still will kind of build this practice and build the practice of building chord progressions by yourself and actually playing them in manually is to play one chord at a time if you need to. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's say that the chord idea that you had was something like this. But there's no way that you could play that in perfectly yet. What I would do is I would just record one chord at a time. And then go back into your MIDI and then press record again. Get your fingers ready on that next chord so you're still learning how to play this chord. So if I didn't like the way that a chord sounded or anything, I can't drag this off time to make it perfect. I would have to manually go in and replay it. So then you would go to the next chord. So now the whole progression is actually played in by me by hand, which one gives it a more human sound, but two, I am learning how to do it. I just haven't got to the point where I can click the chords quick like that. So now that we got that quick tip out of the way, I want to talk about level 4, which is learning all the scales. And I will be 100% real. I have not done this. I definitely should. I am definitely boxing my creativity and boxing myself in by only knowing how to play in C minor. And my excuse is that I'm always short on time. But if I'm telling y'all that you guys can have 15 minutes a day to practice whatever skill you're working on at the moment, I definitely also have 15 minutes a day that I'm not using, that I should be using. So I'm not exactly speaking from excuse with this level, but my theory is that you would just duplicate the whole process just with a new key. So, right, I know how to play C minor, then I would just learn how to do the same thing, but with C sharp minor, move one note up the scale. Once I learned that scale good, move up one more. Move up another. And in theory, it should get easier as you move up each scale because music is all just patterns. It's the same exact pattern. It's just moving where the starting point is. And then once you get to that point, I mean, it's like anything, there's just unlimited levels. You could keep getting better at the piano. But at that point, I would say it's pretty safe to say that you know how to play the keys. With that being said, that's all I have for you guys today. Quick reminder, if you want more in-depth lessons like this on how to sell beats, how to make better music, how to get placements, reviews on your music, advice from me directly, and access to speak with me on group calls, check out that first link in the description to join the Sonics Academy, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.